Hello there, and welcome to World News, coming to you live from Algiers on All 24 News Channel. I'm Kunfa Zachary, and here's what's making headlines tonight. France sees mass protests against far-right policies. Algeria expels 2 French spies and demands deportation of 15 illegally hired staff. Coming up as well, new Zionist strikes killed dozens in Gaza as medical supplies dwindle. 43% of vital drugs now depleted amid the ongoing siege. Also in our news, the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement calls normalization an existential threat to Morocco, while human rights activists criticize Morocco's Nelson Mandela Prize nomination. And later on, Pakistan and India accuse each other of ceasefire violations. Islamabad updates Algeria on the agreement, with Algeria hoping for lasting peace between the two nations. More on these stories coming up next. Stay with us. Hello again and welcome back to the program. First in our news, thousands marched across French cities on Sunday protesting Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau's far-right policies. Demonstrators condemned Islamophobia and rising anti-Muslim attacks, blaming Retailleau for aligning with the far right. Here's Zara Ferjani with the report now.
Calls to end Islamophobia echoed through the streets of Paris and several other French cities as demonstrators rallied against Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau. The protests reflect a growing backlash against what many describe as the minister's inflammatory and exclusionary language targeting Islam and Muslims. Many of those taking part in the protests say Retailleau's remarks are widening social rifts and stirring unrest. Their alarm is backed by official figures. According to the French Ministry of Interior, incidents of anti-Muslim hate surged by 72% in the first quarter of this year compared to the same period last year.
It's very important for us to be here today in this march against Islamophobia. The radicalization of Islamophobia dates back decades, starting in 1983. And worsened with the so-called separatism law in 2021, which marked a real paradigm shift. Since then, Muslims have been affected in every part of life, at work, at school, in public spaces. Even the Minister of the Interior has said things like lower the veil, which, as our brother said earlier, in a call to silence or erase Muslim women.
Political analysts warn that these developments are part of a broader trend, a far-right narrative that seems willing to compromise national unity in the pursuit of political gain. Protesters argue that scapegoating Muslims is being used to divert attention from France's worsening economic challenges.
Today we are seeing what feels like the beginning of an awakening, a growing awareness that Islamophobia is not a secondary issue affecting only Muslims. It is a broader social phenomenon that concerns the entire society and threatens our ability to live together peacefully, because Islamophobia is not some random or isolated incident, nor the result of a few fanatics or mentally unstable individuals, as some try to claim at first after the tragic assassination of our brother Abu Bakr. No, it's the product and the result of a long-standing state policy, and it is time to put an end to it.
Now under mounting pressure, Retailleau and his supporters may be facing a political reckoning, one that could cost them both public support and long-term influence.
Meanwhile, Algeria declared 2 members of France's Internal Security Service persona non grata after they entered the country on diplomatic passports without proper authorization. The agents operating under Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau's authority failed to comply with host country notification rules under the Vienna Conventions and bilateral treaties. Algerian authorities swiftly ordered their expulsion. On a related note, Algeria has ordered France's chargé d'affaires in Algiers to immediately deport all French employees hired in violation of diplomatic procedures. The Foreign Ministry summoned the envoy Sunday following repeated breaches by Paris, including the unlawful appointment of staff at French diplomatic and consular missions.
Specialized Algerian authorities have recently identified the appointment of no fewer than 15 French employees assigned to carry out diplomatic or consular duties on Algerian soil without the required procedures being fulfilled, namely prior official notification of a request for accreditation, as stipulated by relevant international norms and agreements. These individuals who previously held service passports were granted diplomatic passports to facilitate their entry into Algeria. Notably, the same list included 2 officials from the French Ministry of Interior who were intended to partially assume the responsibilities of individuals recently declared persona non grata.
And in the same context, French authorities have suspended the accreditation of 2 newly appointed Algerian consuls general in Paris and Marseille, along with 7 other consuls, leaving them waiting for over 5 months, according to the Algerian news agency.
These violations occur at a time when bilateral relations are already facing several hurdles. On one hand, Algeria has faced repeated refusals for entry into French territory for holders of Algerian diplomatic passports. On the other hand, the accreditation process for 2 newly appointed Algerian consuls general in Paris and Marseille, as well as for 7 other consular officials, has been obstructed, leaving them waiting for over 5 months. In light of these developments, the Algerian authorities have demanded the immediate expulsion of all French personnel appointed under these irregular circumstances and have called for their prompt return to their home country.
In another development, the Algerian military gazette El Jaish called for heightened awareness to counter malicious campaigns targeting Algeria. In its May editorial, the Gazette warned of plots aimed at undermining the country's security, stability, and unity. Switching focus to the war on Gaza now, occupation airstrikes killed at least 17 Palestinians, including 5 children, in Khan Yunis and other parts of Gaza Strip on Sunday. A drone strike hit a displaced family's tent, killing a couple and their 2 children, 1 an infant, while another attack in El Mawasi killed a second family of 4. Strikes near Taiba Towers, El Amal neighborhood, and the Doctors Without Borders Center claimed more lives, including a father and his son. Artillery shelling in northern Gaza killed 4, with victims reported in Jabalia, Az-Zaytun, and Sheikh Radwan neighborhoods. In central Gaza, 4 were killed in Deir el-Bala, including 2 killed by a drone strike. Meanwhile, occupation forces intensified the demolition of homes in Gaza City and Rafah, razing entire neighborhoods under the pretext of creating buffer zones.
It's not one martyr or 2, it's a family. But I congratulate my son and myself for their martyrdom, and I ask God to give me patience, and I'm asking victory from God, not His servants. I ask God to give us victory and to reclaim the rights of the children. Oh, my beloved Muhammad, I was the only one who raised him. I raised Muhammad. My heart is broken for him.
My cousin was in the targeted tent, and the baby martyr, who is 8 months old, who was martyred in the occupation strike last night on a tent of disabled civilians, all of whom are children and women who are not guilty and with no mercy from the Israeli enemy.
Meanwhile, the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza said hospitals received 19 martyrs and 81 wounded in the past 24 hours, bringing total casualties since the Zionist war began to 52,829 martyrs and 119,554 injured. Since renewed fighting began March 18th, at least 2,720 have been killed and 7,513 have been wounded. In the same context, the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza reported Sunday that 43% of essential medicines and 64% of medical equipment are now out of stock, severely hampering healthcare delivery amid the Zionist occupation's blockade. Dr. Ahmed Al-Farah, head of pediatrics at Nasser Medical Complex, said shortages of prenatal nutrients and treatments compounded by exposure to toxic weapons have led to rise in fetal deformities. The ministry reiterated urgent warnings about the collapsing health system as medical aid remains blocked. Similarly, the Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor warned of increasing silent deaths among the elderly and children in Gaza Strip due to deadly living conditions imposed by the occupation. The organization condemned the occupation's systematic destruction of life foundations, describing it as a deliberate strategy to deepen the humanitarian crisis and execute genocide.
A silent death is claiming the lives of the elderly and children in Gaza due to the deadly living conditions deliberately imposed by the occupation, most notably starvation and denial of care, as part of an ongoing genocide that has lasted for more than 19 months. There is a maneuver to extend the illegal blockade by reintroducing the crime of starvation in a misleading form that falsely gives it a humanitarian appearance.
And speaking of the humanitarian crisis in the Strip, starving families scramble to feed hospitalized relatives as Zionist occupation uses famine as a weapon of war, leaving even medical facilities without food supplies. The deliberate starvation campaign has turned malnutrition into another fatal crisis atop bombings and medical collapse. Here's Salman Asib with the report now.
In Gaza, where hospitals are facing unprecedented challenges, Nasser Hospital in Khan Younis stands as a beacon of perseverance. Rehabilitated after being bombed and rendered inoperable, it now struggles to provide even the most basic care. Dr. Khaled Al-Sar, a surgeon at Nasser Hospital, speaks of the overwhelming challenges doctors face daily.
There is no food available in the markets for families to bring to the hospital and feed the patient. Previously, the hospital provided 2 or 3 meals a day to patients, but for the past few weeks, patients have had to fend for themselves for food.
For many patients, survival has become a battle not only against illness but against hunger. Mohammed, a patient in intensive care, reveals the harsh reality.
I have a heart condition and I'm in sensitive care, and all I have is a can of beans, and it's canned, not fresh. This is the situation across the entire country.
With food supplies cut off by the ongoing blockade, families and patients are forced to rely on canned goods, which are neither nutritious nor sufficient for a proper recovery.
My sister, who is ill and bleeds daily, needs protein, fruits and vegetables. Of course, there is none of that available. I can't even feed my children or myself, let alone feed her.
Mohammed Al-Bursh, a relative of a bedridden patient, describes his search for food in a market stripped bare by famine.
I went to the market and found a can of tuna and 2 cans of beans. How is that supposed to be enough for a bedridden patient who's been hospitalized for a month and is in a desperate need of food and drink?
After 19 months of genocide, where hunger is used as a weapon of war, malnutrition has become widespread. Thousands of children are being diagnosed with acute malnutrition, while adults, especially pregnant women, suffer from the lack of essential nutrition. According to the United Nations, an estimated 16,000 pregnant women and mothers are facing acute malnutrition this year. And as the blockade persists, conditions only worsen, with no end in sight. For Gaza, the battle to survive isn't just about surviving the bombs, but surviving the hunger that has claimed countless lives.
Moving on to Morocco now, the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement in Morocco warned that normalization between the Makhzen regime and the Zionist entity poses an existential threat. Activist Sami Abu Abdullah emphasized popular consensus on anti-normalization. Meanwhile, the National Union of Moroccan Students called for active participation in the National Student Forum to oppose normalization set for May from the 13th to and including the 15th, with several organizations joining to denounce the Zionist infiltration in Moroccan universities and other sectors.
The people know exactly what they want. They want an end to normalization and a complete severance of all forms of relations with this entity. What we observe every day in the Moroccan streets is that the public has fully grasped the existential threat posed by any kind of relationship with this occupying state.
In Morocco still, Moroccan activists and journalists have condemned their country's the nomination for the 2025 UN Nelson Mandela Prize, calling it a political scandal that whitewashes the nation's human rights record. Blogger and activist Mohammed Gindel denounced the nomination as another farce in what he described as the Mahzen regime's pattern of official insolence. In another story, Algeria reaffirmed its support for Sahrawi refugees, emphasizing its commitment to humanitarian principles and international law. At the 83rd session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Sherif Dahimi stressed that a lasting solution to the Western Sahara issue lies in allowing the Sahrawi people to exercise the right to self-determination. Algeria urged the Commission to monitor human rights violations committed by the Moroccan occupation.
Algeria continues to provide comprehensive support to the Sahrawi refugees in close cooperation with United Nations specialized agencies, international humanitarian organizations, and donors as part of Algeria's commitment to humanitarian principles and international solidarity.
Sahrawi community associations in Spain's Basque Country commemorated the dual anniversary of the Polisario Front's founding and the launch of their armed struggle on May 20th, 1973. The event in Udeo featured speeches by Polisario representatives and Sahrawi community leaders who highlighted how these historical milestones strengthened Sahrawi unity and resistance. Attendees included the Polisario's deputy representative in the Basque Country, the central director of Sahrawi communities in Europe, and numerous supporters. And as you followed in our headlines, Pakistan and India exchanged accusations of breaching their U.S. brokered ceasefire on Saturday. India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri claimed Pakistani violations and said its military had responded appropriately, urging Islamabad to show seriousness. On the other hand, Pakistan countered by accusing India of violations while asserting its restrained response and reaffirming commitment to the truth. And on the latest updates on this file, Pakistan updated Algeria on recent developments regarding its ceasefire agreement with India during a Sunday phone call between their foreign ministers. Pakistan's Deputy PM Mohammad Ishaq Dar briefed Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf on efforts to maintain the truce and prevent regional escalation. According to a statement from the Algerian Foreign Ministry, Algeria welcomed the agreement, praising diplomatic efforts over confrontation, and expressed hope it would lead to lasting peace between the two neighbors. Switching focus to other topical developments, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai criticized or characterized them, saying the recently concluded fourth round of U.S.-Iran nuclear talks in Muscat as difficult but beneficial, noting they helped clarify positions and explore realistic solutions. While no breakthroughs were achieved, both sides agreed to continue technical discussions with Oman to announce details of the next round. A senior anonymous U.S. official described the three-hour talks involving both direct and indirect negotiations led by U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff as encouraging, confirming another meeting would occur soon. However, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi accused Washington of obstructing progress through contradictory and shifting positions, both at the negotiating table and in media statements.
Unlike the other side, the Islamic Republic of Iran has well-known position based on clear principles, and we have moved forward in a completely direct path. Our stance is entirely transparent. Iran's nuclear program is founded on strong legal and legitimate grounds, and all its peaceful aspects have always been and will continue to be under the supervision of the International Atomic Energy Agency.
On the same occasion, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi reiterated Iran's uncompromising stance on maintaining its nuclear rights, including uranium enrichment.
This is a right of the Iranian people that is not up for negotiation or compromise. Enrichment is one of the achievements and honors of the Iranian nation. A heavy price has been paid for this enrichment. The blood of our nuclear scientists has been shed for it. This is absolutely non-negotiable. That has been our clear stance that we have always voiced.
Moving on to another development in Omdurman, Sudan, a new drone attack struck the twin city of Khartoum, injuring several children aged 5 to 10. Many Sudanese, meanwhile, are rushing to a now hospital for treatment in the aftermath of the attack. Here's Sofian Kanturi with the report.
In Omdurman, Sudan, the aftermath of war continues to ravage healthcare facilities. At a no hospital, wounded children are receiving critical care after being victims of an airstrike. In the Salha neighborhood, 3 children tragically lost their lives, while the survivors are fighting for their lives, suffering from severe injuries. Dr. Jamal Tayyib Al-Abid, the Doctor General of Al-Naw Hospital, describes the harrowing scene.
It appears that this was a family or relatives gathered in one place when the airstrike, possibly a drone, hit. All the injured are children. The oldest was 10, the youngest just 5. 3 of them died. 2 were already dead when they arrived, and the 3rd passed away here in the hospital. 2 others underwent complex surgeries yesterday and are now in intensive care.
In Sudan's war zones, hospitals have become overwhelmed. Healthcare facilities in conflict-affected areas are either non-operational or severely under-resourced, with shortages of medicines, equipment, and personnel, making the task of saving lives even more difficult.
This child arrived with multiple shrapnel wounds in his stomach, hands and legs. He was bleeding a lot and showed no vital signs. We worked tirelessly to transport and resuscitate him, performing emergency surgery. After the operation, his vital signs were stable, but we expect his condition to worsen due to the late admission.
Despite the challenges, medical staff continue to fight on with the limited resources they have. The war between the Sudanese army and the rapid support forces has left the country in a disaster. The human toll is staggering. Tens of thousands dead, 13 million displaced or seeking refuge, and over 25 million Sudanese facing acute food insecurity. As the conflict continues, the people of Sudan are caught in a desperate struggle, facing unimaginable hardship, and fighting not just for survival, but for the very basic human rights that are being stripped away. But as long as there are those willing to fight on the front lines of healthcare, there is still hope, though that hope grows smaller each day.
And in another topical development, but this time in Europe, Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul on May 15th, aiming to address the root causes of the war and achieve lasting peace, not just a ceasefire. This offer was endorsed by U.S. President Donald Trump, who urged Ukraine to accept Putin's invitation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, for his part, confirmed his willingness to negotiate, but conditioned it on an immediate and permanent ceasefire. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan welcomed the talks and offered to host them in Istanbul, emphasizing the potential for peace. The Kremlin advisor Yuri Ushakov stated that talks will consider the current situation and past negotiations from 2022. Time to catch up on other news stories in the News in Brief.
Ukrainian air defenses intercepted 60 of 108 Russian drones targeting Kiev and multiple regions overnight Saturday. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry accused Ukraine of violating the Victory Day truce with 9,918 raids and border infiltration attempts in Kursk and Belgorod.
The Sudanese army has recaptured the cities of Al-Khawi and Sumaima in Kordofan state from the rapid support forces and is now encircling RSF positions in Ahoud, aiming to advance toward Darfur. Meanwhile, in North Darfur, artillery shelling by the RSF on a Fasher killed 9 civilians, including 4 children, and injured several others.
The US calls for a complete reset of trade relations with China. President Trump praised recent trade talks in Switzerland as very good, while both nations aim for a 3-month tariff truce. Swiss economy minister sees the ongoing talks as a success in easing global trade tensions.
At least 104 people died in severe flooding that ravaged eastern Congo between May 9th to 11th. The Congolese news agency reported massive damage in Bukavu's northern village of Bubali-Itnain, where 62 buildings collapsed.
The end of our news program. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.